Hello, this is the Lafourche Parish Clerk of Court. Today, we're going to give a presentation on preparing for the PPP, or the Presidential Preference Primary, taking place on March 23rd, 2024. In our presentation, we will include lockouts, provisional ballots, and supplemental and absentee voted by mail envelopes. Let's get started. An overview of the information in this presentation will include lockouts. In this March election coming up, people will have lockouts for certain political parties, among other races. We will also cover provisional ballots because this is a federal election and certain people may be allowed to cast a provisional ballot. And we will also cover supplemental envelopes and why they are important. What is the PPP? The Presidential Preference Primary is the election that allows members of a political party, mainly Democrats or Republicans, to cast a vote for the presidential candidate of their choice in advance of the presidential election. This type of election is considered federal, which would allow a voter to cast a provisional ballot, if applicable. This type of election creates lockouts on election day because only members of the political party may cast a ballot for a candidate in their respective political party. The next few slides will cover examples of what that means. All right. In this election, you may encounter different types of voters. The first of which would be a person coming in to vote for the presidential preference primary, namely a Democrat or a Republican casting their ballot to choose their presidential nominee. You may also be voting for a Democratic or Republican committee for the state or for the parish, and you may also have a different type of election altogether, like for example, School Board District Number 7. In the next few slides, we will mention specific precincts with specific lockouts for the March 23rd election. 212, which is Bowie Fire Station, button 1 will be Democrat, button 7 will be Republican who lives inside RSCC member District 21F. Button 9 will be Republican. At 41, which is Lockport Volunteer Fire Station, button 1 will be Democrat, button 7 is Republican, button 9 will be all other voters. Voters at 46 and 92, which is North LaRose Elementary School, and 74, which is the Raceland Ag Building. Button 1 will be for a Democrat who lives inside School Board District 7. Button 3 will be a Democrat. Button 7, a Republican who lives inside School Board District 7. Button 9 is Republican. Button 11, any party that lives inside School Board District 7. Lockouts for precincts 42, 43, and 91, which are Lockport Volunteer Fire Company, Lockport Town Hall, and Career Magnet Center, will be button 1, Democrat, button 7, Republican, button 9, all other voters. For precincts 44 and 45, which are Lockport Town Hall and Bellevue Fire Station, button 1 will be Democrat, button 7 will be Republican, and button 9, all other voters. For all other precincts that were not mentioned, you will have lockouts for button 1, Democrat, and button 7, Republican. Now we're going to walk you through a lockout example. Mr. John Green is a member of the Republican Party. Mr. Green wants to vote in the PPP. Mr. Green wants to vote on election day at his precinct. Mr. Green presents his government-issued photo ID and signs the precinct register. He will then be given a lockout number card, which will instruct the machine worker to press that lockout when activating the machine. Because Mr. Green is a registered Republican, his lockout will allow him to only cast a ballot for a presidential candidate from the Republican list. There may be other offices that Mr. Green can vote for on Election Day, but his lockout for the PPP allows him to choose his candidate for a Republican president only. A few reminders as we wrap up the discussion of the PPP. The lockout for Democrats should be lockout 1. The lockout for Republicans should be lockout 7. Remember, a Democrat must vote Democrat and a Republican must vote Republican in the presidential preference primary. If the voter becomes agitated regarding their lockout, please call 985-447-5266 and speak to someone at the clerk's office and we can help. There will be a letter outlining all lockouts for the March 23rd election in the machine with the requisite lockout cards, and the CIC will be sent a letter to their mailing address prior to Election Day.
The lockout district column in the precinct register for each voter to determine which button number is needed to activate their ballot. If needed, write the number down and give it to the commissioner activating the machine. On the operator panel, press the button number for the voter, for example, button 1, then press the green activate button. If the voter's button number is 3, you would press button 3, then the green activate button. If you accidentally press a wrong button number, it is okay for you to press the correct button number before pressing activate. But if you have already pressed the activate button with an incorrect button number, call the clerk's office for help. Once the voting machine is activated, it will make a sound, and the light next to the activate button will light up. The display screen on the operator panel will read voter active, and the booth light will come on. Tell the voter to enter when it's their turn. Curtains won't automatically open or close. You may inform the voter on how to operate the voting machine by telling them to look for a green light by the titles of offices they are eligible to vote for. To vote for a candidate, a voter must press the white box to the right of the candidate's name or next to the yes or no for propositions. A green X will light up to the left of the box, not inside the box. If a voter would like to change their vote prior to pressing the Cast Vote button, you may instruct them to deselect their choice by pressing the white box again. The green X will disappear, and the voter can then press the white box next to their new selection. Again, the green X will appear to the left of the box and not in the box. After making all selections, the voter must press the orange Cast Vote button in the bottom right-hand corner. You'll hear an electronic beep like this. Their vote is now recorded, and the machine is automatically ready to be activated for the next voter.
On Election Day, there may be multiple voters who are not eligible to vote in the election. This will be written in their precinct register. If there is any issue with the voter, please call the Clerk of Court office so that we can check on their registration. As always, you may have voters who are not listed in the precinct register or on the supplemental precinct register. If this is the case, you should always contact the registrar of voters before doing anything. The next section will discuss provisional ballots. A provisional ballot is one cast for a federal office, such as the President of the United States. It is a paper ballot that can only be cast by a registered voter in the parish. For example, Mr. John Green is an active registered voter in Lafourche Parish. He is permitted to cast a provisional ballot in Lafourche Parish for a federal office during a federal election. A federal election is one where a candidate runs for a federal office. For example, the President of the United States, or a U.S. representative, or a U.S. senator. In such an election, if a registered voter is unable to get to their precinct to cast a vote for these federal offices, they are able to cast a provisional ballot at another voting precinct on election day. The following slide will instruct you on the proper procedure for handling provisional ballots on election day. As stated previously, federal elections are elections mandated by the U.S. Constitution or the state and include the following: the presidential preference primaries, which are state mandated, a U.S. President Constitution, U.S. Senator Constitution, U.S. Representative Constitution. Federal elections have more requirements and supplies than non-federal elections. As always, before giving a provisional ballot to any voter, you must contact the Clerk of Court office. The number for the clerk's office is 985-447-5266. This number rings directly into the elections department where you may speak to an elections representative. The next few slides are the instructions regarding provisional ballots from the informational pamphlet for election day voting. Please pay attention to each slide. Either a commissioner or a commissioner in charge may assist a voter with provisional ballots. The election worker completes the top flap and sections 1 and 3. The voter is given the envelope to fill out section 2. They should do this off to the side so as to not block anyone who is there to actively vote. The poll books need to reflect all provisional votes cast. This is page 29 and 30 in the gold and pink books. They begin entry 1681 and go through 1800. The top flap should be given back to the voter. The voter signs in the provisional section of the precinct register. The ballot is then placed by the election worker into the provisional envelope and kept safely off to the side. Please read this slide carefully as it reiterates the instructions for filling out a provisional ballot. As a reminder, always review your handbook that you were given at training prior to elections. They contain all of the information that was presented in this presentation.
Provisional voting only used when a federal office is on the ballot. What is provisional voting? Provisional voting provides a fail-safe procedure for voting during federal elections when any person arrives to vote and is not listed as an eligible voter and is not authorized to vote by an election official. A provisional ballot is a paper ballot given to the voter so they are able to cast their ballot provisionally until election officials verify the voter's eligibility to vote in the federal election. It is important to note that provisional voting is not convenience voting, where a voter may appear anywhere in the state to vote and have their vote counted. When is provisional voting available? Provisional ballots are only available during a federal election and only include federal races, which are the presidential preference primary, U.S. President, U.S. Senator, and/or U.S. Representative. Provisional voting does not apply to local or state races, propositions, or constitutional amendments on the ballot during federal elections. Who is a provisional voter? Before they are given a provisional ballot, a person being considered as a provisional voter must certify in writing on the provisional ballot affidavit envelope that they are registered to vote in the parish and are eligible to vote in the election for federal office. If a voter arrives to vote and they are registered in the parish but at the wrong precinct, recommend to the voter that they go to their precinct to vote so they can vote on all candidates and questions, not just federal races. If a voter identifies with one of the following 4 categories, they may be given a provisional ballot. When a person's name does not appear in the precinct register or supplemental register and they are not authorized to vote by an election official. When a voter is challenged and a majority of the commissioners determine that the challenge is valid. When the clerk of court or the Secretary of State informs the commissioners that a court has ordered extended poll hours. Or when an inactive voter cannot vote on the voting machine because they cannot affirm that they moved outside the parish more than 3 months ago, they are not eligible to vote. Refer to the provisional voting chart in the informational pamphlet for detailed information. Please note, all forms and envelopes used with provisional voting will be printed with purple ink, except for the provisional ballot itself. There are 2 additional supply items included with the regular supplies in the back of the voting machine for federal elections. A Braille booklet envelope, which will be located in the green canvas bag, and a purple Election Day provisional packet, which will be located in the precinct-specific envelope. It will contain the provisional ballots and affidavit envelopes for the precinct and pencils. Important. Always open the purple Election Day provisional packet and inventory your supplies in a federal election. Follow the instructions in the informational pamphlet for Election Day voting to allow for provisional voting in federal elections. When the election day ends, place all voted provisional ballot stubs, and all unused provisional ballots and affidavit envelopes back into the purple Election Day provisional packet and return it to the clerk of court with a clear plastic zipper bag. The Braille booklet provides voting information for any voter with a visual impairment who reads Braille, and it will be returned to the green canvas bag. What is the procedure for voting provisionally? When allowing a person to vote a provisional ballot, the commissioner prints the voter's name in the precinct register behind the Provisional Voters tab. The voter signs next to their name, prints their address, and the commissioner initials. The person's name is also written in the 2 poll lists on the second to last page, starting at number 1681. The commissioner selects the appropriate provisional ballot from the supply envelope, removes the ballot number stub from the bottom portion, and retains the stub. The commissioner completes the top red portion of the provisional envelope flap by writing the ballot stub number in 2 places on the envelope flap and writing the ward, if any, and the precinct number. The envelope clearly states where the commissioner is to complete information and where the voter completes information. This is very important so that the voter can later track the status of their provisional ballot. The voter completes the remaining information on the envelope flap and signs. The commissioner gives the voter the provisional ballot, the envelope, and a pencil, and directs the voter to a private area where they can mark the ballot in secret. After voting, the voter seals the ballot inside the envelope and returns it to the commissioner. A pencil is provided so that the voter may change their vote if they choose, but a voter may use a pen to mark the ballot, and if the voter spoils their ballot, he may have a ballot replacement. Be sure to verify that all information is completed on the sealed envelope flap and that the voter has signed. It is important for the commissioner to remove the red "to the provisional voter's" top portion of the envelope flap and give it to the voter so that the voter may track the status of their provisional ballot through the Secretary of State's website to see if it was counted. All voted provisional ballots and all unused provisional supplies must be returned to the clerk of court on election night. Commissioners should return all supplies and voted provisional ballots into the purple Election Day provisional packet envelope and complete Section 2 of the instructions as necessary. Return it to the clerk of court with a clear plastic zipper bag. If you are missing any provisional voting supplies, have questions, or need clarity regarding provisional voting on Election Day, call the Clerk of Court's office as soon as possible. It is always good practice to be prepared ahead of time as best you can. We thank you for your time and dedication to our great state. Our goal is to make sure everyone has an opportunity to go vote.
It is extremely important to remember that any and all provisional ballots must be brought back to the clerk at the end of Election Day with Election Day returns. This includes unused ballots. Everything must be placed into the provisional ballot envelope, sealed, filled out, and returned to the clerk at the end of the day. In this next section, we will cover for you the supplemental list envelopes and the absentee voted by mail envelopes. This slide contains a picture of what that envelope looks like. It is important that all supplemental envelopes are dealt with prior to the opening of polls. There are two types. There is a supplemental list envelope, and there is an absentee voted by mail envelope. Supplemental list envelopes are rare, and you may or may not have those at every election. However, absentee voted by mail envelopes are more likely to occur. Your supplemental lists are placed at the back of the precinct register in the appropriate tab. This list shows voters who are not printed in the original precinct register but will be able to vote on the current election day. Voters must sign on this list when they come in to vote on election day. The second type of envelope is absentee voted by mail envelopes. This contains lists of individuals who have already cast a vote by mail and are not permitted to vote at the polling precinct on election day. This list must be processed prior to the opening of polls. You will find the name of each voter on the list in the precinct register. You will handwrite in the signature spot "Voted by mail." Then you will initial in the initial box. Then you will replace the list in each envelope and place at the back of the precinct register. Continuing on with supplemental envelopes, a clerk of court representative will always call the precinct to ensure that the supplemental lists have been processed. Usually, the majority of these envelopes are sent with the machine keys. However, sometimes they are not delivered until the morning of election day. In the future, a clerk of court representative will be texting the CIC the list or lists that were unable to go with the keys. That way they can be processed prior to the opening of polls or the delivery of the physical envelope. This is to ensure that no one who has already voted by mail can cast an additional vote in person. As always, the envelopes will still be delivered to the polling precinct as appropriate. And that concludes our online training. We want to thank you for participating in this online course. It is imperative to know this information ahead of the March election. Elections would never be successful without the dedication of individuals like yourselves. As always, we thank you very much for your continued support and invite you to always contact us with any questions or concerns. Good luck and have a great election.